Good morning, good evening, good night, whatever the case may be. It's time for World History. Welcome in to another exciting video lecture with the one and only Coach Hughes. And today we take you back to ancient Rome. And that's what we've been talking about for the last several lectures here. Really about the geography of Rome. It's kind of that country Italy is that's shaped like a boot, looks like it's kicking a oddly shaped football in the island of Sicily. And we talked about the kneecap right there on the Tiber River being the wonderful, luxurious city-state of Rome. And really, we talked about the geography. We have the Alps, the second highest mountain range in all of the world, just behind the Himalayas, and the vein that runs down the boot of Italy there, the Apennines mountain range, and then Italy itself being a peninsula surrounded by water on three sides, making it basically like Florida, the state of Florida, that is, in a peninsula. And of course, the water being the Mediterranean Sea area. All of this geography sets the stage for the development of what would become the Roman Republic, and you had the patricians and the plebeians, the haves and the have-nots, kind of butting heads and setting up their own type of government. You had dictators, you had the development of the Senate and the tribunes and the magistrates and all of these things building up really to a time period to where it's really time for the Republic to make this switch to what would ultimately become the Roman Empire. Arguably, and I do say arguably, one of the greatest empires that the world had ever seen, especially up to this point in the ancient world. So sit back, relax, and we'll kind of take you through how the Roman Republic transforms itself into what we know as, well, the Roman Empire. I'm going to move my screen here just a little bit so you guys can have a better view of what's going on in the PowerPoint here today. So, from the Republic to the Empire, we shall talk about what we know to be Rome. So, as I kind of mentioned in passing just a few minutes ago, you had the mighty patricians, the rich, the elite, the powerful, and you had the plebeians, the poor, the commoners, the lonely of the lows at the bottom. It's a little bit different from what we have here in 2021, where here in the United States, you have the majority of people being in that middle class. uh, you have money but you're not rich, or you have some money but you're not poor. You kind of fall in that middle class, and there's a few people that have a lot of money, the elite, and there's a few people that have hardly nothing, the poor. But the majority of people will be classified as a middle class. Didn't really happen that way in the ancient world. You were a have, the elite, the powerful, or a commoner, the plebeians, the poor. Not really anybody in the middle class there. You were a have or a have not. And population wise, the majority of people kind of falls into that second category, the plebeians, the commoner, the poor. Okay. So this gap between the patricians and the plebeians, they grew, and farmers especially suffered. Basically, what you had the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. Take some of those plebeians that did have some land, and land in the ancient world that contributed and equaled money. Let's take and look at B there. Latifundias were large farming estates created when wealthy Romans bought small farms from those plebeians. The quite literally few people that did, in fact, have some financial gain, I guess you could say, some money behind they themselves with their small farms. But as these rich elite nobles, elite wealthians, the patricians, they come in and they start buying this farmland, the small chunks of small land, farmland from the plebeians. Well, the elite, the patricians would pay the plebeians, and the plebeians would go out and they would, use this money to purchase things that they need, just like you would in today's world. But once that money left out, their income source, it was gone. But the patricians had the money. They had more and more lands. Their lands got bigger and bigger, so their funds, their money, got more and more. So, in a sense, the rich got richer because they gained more land and they had that kind of in the bank, if you would, as a resource. Where the plebeians, they spent this money that the patricians got them, or gave them for their small farms, and after that money was gone, they didn't have anything to kind of back what they had up. So farmers whose land had been bought, they did what a lot of people do. They traveled to cities to try to look for other jobs. Since all that money, they spent it, maybe even to get to the cities, maybe to find a better job, if you would, to make some sort of income. But their money source kind of goes away. So the poor kind of got poor and they go to the cities, and the cities' population really kind of exploded beyond that. Okay. So the rich got richer and the poor, well, they got poorer. So Cicero, famous orator, a speaker, a public speaker, if you would, asked Romans to return power to the Senate and bring order back to Rome. And remember who was kind of in charge of the Senate? It was the elite, it was the patricians. But do they have a say so, a voice? You did have some plebeians that entered into the government, but not in the role of senator, really, to some degree. But Rome's government kind of stayed the same. Circle E, put a star by. You need to know this one for the quiz, upcoming quiz and test. A triumvirate. Tri, meaning three. Triumvirate is a political alliance of three people. And the first triumvirate that you need to know was made up of Julius Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey. And they formed a triumvirate, the first triumvirate after Sulla left office. Now let's kind of back up and let's go over who was Sulla. Well, if you remember in our last discussion, way back in chapter 10, section 3, there were three crises that kind of struck the Roman Republic late in its stages there. One was Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, the two twin brothers, not twin brothers, I'm thinking of Romulus and Remus there, but they were brothers, and they kind of came to power and they wanted to do good and they tried to change a lot of things, but people do not like change in general, and they did too much too quickly, and both of them were basically murdered, killed. The second crisis that struck the late Roman Republic was when Gaius Marius, he said, you know what? We need an army. We need to build our army. And a lot of the poor got poor, the rich got poor. So what did he do? He let the unemployed, he let the poor people join the Roman military, which was never done before. And all of these people started joining the military, and they were so very thankful that they had some income now, that a lot of people in the Senate and in Rome's government started to say, whoa, hold your horses there for just a second. All these people are very grateful to Gaius Marius, and we can't have that because all these people that have joined the army, they are going to kind of turn on us, and he could, lead a rebellion and become dictator of Rome and kind of take over everything else. So Lucius Sulla raised his own army, and you might could say, even to a degree, that the army that Gaius Marius formed was not as organized, not as skilled, from a standpoint that these people had never been in the military before that joined his army. that Sulla eventually wins, but Sulla declares himself dictator, and well, he kind of does the same thing that Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, the brothers, do. He start changing things, but he realized, hey, you know, I saw what happened with them, so I'm going to kind of sit back and I'm going to change a little bit, and then I'm resigning. Time out. I'm out. So he resigns from office. There was a third crisis after that, and it involved a slave named Spartacus. They kind of took over southern Italy before Spartacus was actually killed and the rebellion turned down. So that kind of gives you some background of when this first triumvirate with Julius Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey were formed. It is the first triumvirate, and it happened after Sulla left office, after he resigned, because he was changing a lot of things, and he kind of wanted out after that before he got killed. So I'm going to move my little headshot there so you can see a little bit better. So Julius Caesar, he marches on Rome, on the city of Rome, and he defeated Pompey's forces. And you say, whoa, 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 back up, time out. I thought these guys were all on the same side. Well, think about it this way. What you had in the first triumvirate were basically three very strong personalities, three kind of alpha dogs, dogs that kind of bump heads with each other. Now, Crassus, he dies in battle, so that basically leaves Julius Caesar and Pompey, and they are two alpha males. And you kind of have the same scenario that you had when Sulla, Lucius Sulla, guy we just talked about, and Marius Gaius kind of butted heads. So these two alpha males kind of declare war, a civil war on each other. Julius Caesar, he marches on the city of Rome and he defeats Pompey's forces. Circle G. After this, Caesar declares himself, I am now dictator of Rome for life. And he made a lot of changes to Rome. And remember, in the Roman Republic, a dictator was just someone that Rome put in place in case of an emergency, food shortage, war, and then, that person steps down in the Senate and this kind of democracy of government kind of takes over. Julius Caesar completely changes all that. He is no Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus, if you might remember back from chapter 10, there was a crisis, a war. He steps in, he becomes dictator. He defeats the enemy in 16 days. Then he steps back, says, hey, done my job. Yeah, people are back in charge, the Senate. I'm going to go be a farmer. Julius Caesar takes his army, defeats Pompey, and then says, hey, I am dictator. I ain't going nowhere, and I'm here for life, whether you like it or not. Woo! And he starts changing a lot of things. Well, the plebeians, the poor, the big population there in Rome, they love Julius Caesar. Love him. Julius Caesar is kind of like what we describe as a tyrant in earlier chapters, to where he has that personal appeal to the lower class. He kind of knows what the masses want, and he kind of provides and gives the commoner, the plebeians, what they want, so they're happy. Because happy people, they like this, and they're going to sit back, and even though they have the biggest population, they're going to let Julius Caesar basically be this dictator for life. One of the things that Caesar does, like I said, in G there, he makes many changes to Rome. One was the Julian calendar, and it was created during Caesar's rule there in Rome. And this calendar was changed ever so slightly about 1582 AD, but it's basically still the same type of calendar we use today. The month of July, for example, Julius Caesar. October, Octavian. We'll talk about him in a minute. August, Augusta. We'll talk about him. Quite frankly, the same person. We'll talk about him in just a minute there. So Caesar comes in. He declares himself dictator for life. poor people, the plebeians, loved him, but the patricians, the elite, the wealthy, the people in charge of the Senate who were making all the rules, they did not like this because now Caesar, that being Julius Caesar, is in charge, and the Senate kind of takes a back seat, and they don't have as much authority as they did have. So Caesar had many enemies as well as supporters, like I said, but the supporters are kind of on the poorer side. So all of these, or I shouldn't say all, but a lot of the Senate, they kind of hatched this plan, and they hatched this assassination plan to take Julius Caesar out. And this has happened before. Remember the brothers I mentioned earlier, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. They were two brothers that came in and changed a lot of things, and they were killed. That kind of set a precedent of what I'm leading up to here. So all of these, some, I shouldn't say all, some of these elite senators, they get together and they conspire a plot to take Caesar out. On March 15th, and even if you check your calendars today, it has what I'm going to lead up to. On March 15th, 44 BC, you don't have to know a lot of dates, you need to know this date. On March 15th, 44 BC, a group of senators plotted to kill their leader, their dictator for life, Julius Caesar, and they succeeded by stabbing him to death. Now listen to the story here. Caesar was led to the Senate chamber, basically, by his good friend, arguably his best friend, Marcus Brutus. And Brutus kind of leads him in to the Senate floor, probably thought he was going there, going to meet with the Senate, going to give a speech, whatnot. And he leads him in here, and Brutus takes this knife out and stabs Caesar. Caesar is stunned. He is stunned. And all these other senators, they take their shank, their knife out, and it's kind of like a line at a carnival ride where they kind of line up and they take turns of stabbing Caesar. Before the majority of stabs gets into, after that first stab of Marcus Brutus, Julius Caesar looks up at Brutus and goes, "E tu, Brute," meaning, "And you, Brutus, and you, my best friend, you're going to turn on me? You're going to lead what's about to happen?" And the other senators, they just take stabs after stabs. And Caesar dies in this assassination attempt. Circle K, Caesar's death becomes known as the Ides of March. On most hard copy calendars that you find, probably electronic calendars too, if you scroll down to March 15th, on most calendars, it's going to say Ides of March, or some calendars, it's going to say beware the Ides of March, because this day, March 15th, is the day that people say that your friends become your enemies. So beware March 15th, as that day is coming up soon. So what happens now? Well, remember, population-wise, the majority of people, the plebeians, they love Julius Caesar. Love Julius Caesar. And then not all the senators were involved on it, but the patricians, the Senate as a whole, that is a small group of people. So now you have this large group of plebeians who love Julius Caesar, and you had, to a degree, some of the patricians that love Caesar as well, and you have this small group that kind of plotted together to have Caesar kind of taken out. So this created another alliance. Octavian. Octavian was Caesar's grandnephew who inherited all of Julius Caesar's wealth after his death on March 15th, 44 BC. Mark Antony and Lepidus were two of Caesar's top generals. So these three guys got together and circle in, put a star bot on the quiz, on the test. Octavian and Mark Antony and Lepidus, they form the second Dos Triumvirate. And their whole thing was, we're gonna revenge. I will get my vengeance against Julius Caesar's enemies. Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, they form the second triumvirate. But again, remember what happened to the first triumvirate. All of these guys, including Julius Caesar, were basically alpha males. And Octavian, to a degree, some would argue against this, but Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, they too are alpha males, and they want to be the one that gets vengeance for Caesar. And they kind of start bickering and fighting almost instantaneously after the formation of this second triumvirate. So all three of them, they take their armies, they defeat Caesar's killers, take them out, kill all of their enemies, and the enemies who are not captured and killed by Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, they basically kill themselves in suicide attempts because they know the torture that they would have to go through if they were captured. Now, Octavian, he returns to Italy. Mark Antony, kind of after the killers are taken care of, he heads east to fight the Rome's enemies, because as this kind of civil war goes on, they don't want to forget Rome does have enemies outside of Rome itself. Lepidus kind of what happens to Cracus in battle in the first triumvirate, he's basically taken out and killed. So it comes down to Mark Antony and Octavian. Now, side story. All right. So during this time, Mark Antony, why they're going after Caesar's killers, Mark Antony, he ends up marrying Octavian's sister. So it's kind of all in the family and everybody's happy. But then Mark Antony takes his troops and he heads to fight Rome's enemies in the east, one of those enemies being Egypt. When he gets to Egypt, Mark Antony falls for a girl. It's always a girl. He falls in love with Cleopatra. Now, over the years, you've heard of just one Cleopatra. There were actually several Cleopatras in Egypt. This happens to be Cleopatra number 7. Okay. So while he's there, he falls in love, has an affair with Cleopatra, and he ends up divorcing Octavian's sister to become co-ruler of Egypt with Cleopatra. Well, obviously, this does not sit well with Octavian. Hey, you cheated on my sister here, and now you divorced her, you married this other girl, and now you're what? You're co-ruler of Egypt with Cleopatra? No, not going to happen. So basically, Octavian, he declares war on Antony and his troops to keep him from coming back and taking over Rome and having Cleopatra and Mark Antony basically co-rule Rome and Egypt. So here we go again, kind of another civil war to a degree. Circle Q, know this battle. Octavian, he defeats Mark Antony and Cleopatra's forces at the Battle of Actium. And Antony and Cleopatra, they know that Octavian and his forces are closing in on him. So they go back to Egypt, and there they commit suicide together. Basically, what they do is they hold hands, as man and woman sometimes do. They hold hands. They stick their hands in this kind of vase, and it's full of these poisonous snakes, and the snakes kind of bites their wrist. They lay down on the bed and they die from the venom that the snakes gave them in their bites, because they know, and Mark Antony knows, if Octavian captures him, he divorced his sister, he married Cleopatra, they become co-rulers of Egypt. He knows Oh my gosh, this is going to be very, very bad, torture-wise. And Octavian is kind of the last man standing. Again, Cicerino comes in. Was a political leader. I mentioned him earlier. Writer, public speaker, kind of like a celebrity. Think of some celebrities that kind of speak out on political issues. That's what Cicerino was doing here. He favored a representative government and supported and wanted Romans to give power to Octavian because he had seen everything that had going on. He thought Octavian would be the right person from the job. Octavian restores the Republic with some of the reforms, and he eventually takes the title Augustus, meaning revered one. And it's really when Octavian changes his name from Octavian to Augustus that this really starts the change from the Roman Republic to now the Roman Empire. And the empire will be led by dictators with some guidance from the Senate, but the dictators are now officially in charge. And this is a big, big transition. And usually people look at it from when Octavian changed his name from Octavian to Augustus. This marked the end of the Roman Republic and the official start or beginning of the Roman Empire. And on that map there, the Roman Empire, arguably the greatest empire in the history of the world, arguably at this point in history, the largest empire in the world. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes chapter 10. I'm sorry, chapter 11, section 1, although we've talked a lot about the beginnings of the Roman Republic there. This lecture was merely kind of to tell you the details, how the Roman Republic kind of transforms into the Roman Empire. So we'll talk more about Octavian, Augustus. We'll talk more about something called the Pax Romana and kind of 200 years of stability in the next little video lecture. So kind of watch this video lecture, study your notes, go back over the PowerPoint. You've got a quiz coming up, and then eventually you'll have a test on all this information from chapter 11. So until next time, God bless and take care.